Hello friends, and welcome back to Haley's Reading Nook. Today I am going to get into part 3 of 2022's reading journey so far. So that means I am going to be talking about the books that I read in July, August, and September. So without any further ado, let's get into it and let's get chatting about some books. So up first on our reading docket for July, I got really deeply invested into a series, if you can't tell from my shirt, and I ended up blowing through all 4 of the books that are available at this point, and that is the Heartstopper series. I actually watched the show first, and then I wanted to just read all of the books, and they were adorable. So I had read Heartstopper 1, Heartstopper 2, Heartstopper 3, and Heartstopper 4. I love the different colors of all of these physical books. I think that they are so pretty, so like precious, and I love having them on my shelf. You can see all of the spines are a different color as well. The story itself is just so cute, so precious. I fell in love with the characters and the different friend groups and just how endearing they all were. It is set in a school over in Europe, in Britain. So it is have a lot of British like humor or different British idioms, things like that, that you had to get into the mindset a little bit, but I read them back to back to back to back. So I definitely was just engrossed in the world, and I loved it. I thought it was adorable. I'm really excited for the 5th one to come out. I think it'll be a little while. I don't remember when they said, if they said that a 5th one was coming out. The artwork in it, the comic strips I love it, and I love the different colors. So I realized after I had purchased all of these that I think I don't know if they're published by different publishing houses, but I got 2 that have some color in the strips, and then 2 that are just black and white. So I don't know if that was just on me or what, but either way, it doesn't bother me. I like that it goes like 1, 2, 3, and then 4. So I don't know if that was a fault of my own. It definitely could have been when I was purchasing these. I just was so excited to get them. So my graphic novel experience has definitely just exploded in this year, and you'll see that coming up in a couple of different graphic novels that I did read in the upcoming months as well. But this was a big one and I loved it. I actually found this shirt in a Goodwill, so I was able to find it and thrift it, and I'm so excited. I'm so excited to wear it and to talk about these books because I loved them. So the next book that I read in July was A Stationery Shop by Marjan Kamali. It was a heartbreaking story about lost love. At moments it just tugged on your heartstrings, and I guess it just was a month of a lot of like love stories, and just this particular book it left me heartbroken in a lot of times, and it was an emotional read, and I devoured it. It was such a quick read for me, even though some of the parts were harder to get through. And who doesn't love a good shop full of paper and stationery? There were some parts in it that were definitely on the darker side, but it was a lovely little book, and it was actually a recommendation from my mom. So that one I did get to finish in July, and I'm really glad that I was able to read it. It was checked out from my library. I got the audio version, and it was a good one. So heartbreaking, very, very heartbreaking. This next book that I actually read on my computer through Hoopla. As I said, I have been getting more and more into graphic novels, and this one was actually a comic book. I watched the show Moon Knight with my husband, and I was fascinated by it, and I really, really wanted to explore the character of Moon Knight more. And so I read the first volume, which was Moon Knight Volume 1, Lunatic. It was a trip. And I am really glad that I picked that one out and got to read that one. And I'm really excited to talk about a couple more of the Moon Knight series in coming up months, because I did finish, I think, the 3 books that are out at this point. I don't know if there's more. I think it's just the 3. And the first one grabbed my attention, and it got me really excited to read more comic books. So I have been on, like I said, a graphic novel comic book kind of spree in the last couple of months, and I've been really, really enjoying them. I want to read this one, or I wanted to read it physically, but we didn't have it in the library, and so I figured reading it digitally would work. It's not my favorite way to consume books, but it was fun to just sit down and every once in a while be able to read a chapter or so here and there instead of doing work. So, oh yeah, but Moon Knight Volume 1 was a fun one to really dive into. So the next book that I got to read in July was actually a book club choice for our online Patreon book club that I run with my sister, and that was Half Sick of Shadows by Laura Sebastian. This book, for those who don't know, I love retellings of different mythological stories. So that can be Arthurian, that could be Greek, Roman, Egyptian, all of it. I am just drawn to retellings. This one was from the perspective of Elaine of Shalott. So it was The Lady of Shalott, which is a poem that I actually did read, and going into the book club, I read it to give me kind of a perspective of where this story came from. It was they say a feminist retelling. There was some debate that we had on that at our book club, but I really enjoyed it. I thought that the characters were really compelling, and even though you knew where a lot of the story was going, if you had already read a lot of Arthurian mythology, there were a lot of really good twists and turns here and there, and it didn't turn out exactly how I expected it to, which was a really fun take on the whole story. This one has been sitting on my TBR shelf for a long time, and I'm really excited to get it off of there and into my normal bookshelf. And I just had a really good time reading it. I think most people in our book club gave it a good thumbs up. There were a couple here and there that it just wasn't their style, but definitely a fun feminine perspective retelling of an Arthurian legend. So I would check it out if you are a fan of Arthurian retellings. I definitely liked it. So yeah. The last July book that I read was for my Michigan book club. And it's probably one of my least favorite, if not my least favorite books of the year. We decided to read a more classic novel, and we chose The Catcher in the Rye. I'm not gonna lie, I did not like it. So I don't know if I would have liked it more if I would have read it when I was younger, because this was one I know a lot of people read in school. I did not. My school didn't have it in our curriculum. So I just wasn't a fan as a grown adult woman. It just wasn't my cup of tea. So I am glad to have this book over. If it wasn't for book club, I probably would have DNF'd it. So I finished it for book club, and we had a real interesting discussion about it. So let me know if you really, really like The Catcher in the Rye and why you like The Catcher in the Rye, because I know that a lot of people really, really enjoy this book. I am just not one of them. It's not for me, but I'm curious if any of you really like this book and what your why you like it, like what about this book draws you, because maybe I'll give it a reread from a different perspective. But this one is just gonna go on my shelf and stay there. So that is all of the July books that I got through this year. So let's go on to August. So in August, I was able to get 9 books read. Some of those were books that I own that I read physically. Some of those were from Hoopla, and they were graphic novels. Surprise, surprise. So my first book in August was actually Magic Lessons by Alice Hoffman, which is the prequel, or a second prequel, to the Practical Magic series. So this book is actually the third one that Alice Hoffman came out with. There was Practical Magic, and then there was The Rules of Magic, and then now Magic Lessons. Magic Lessons follows the original ancestor who put the curse of true love on the Owens family when her heart was broken. Now, I actually really, really liked this book. I would say as the story progresses, I like it more and more. So Practical Magic, if you've watched my previous videos, you know that I really enjoyed the movie and I appreciated the book. Lessons in Magic, I really liked it because it was talking about the ants, and it had a little bit more of the feeling of the movie to it, where it was a little bit sassier and you just fell in love with the characters of the ants. And this one, which is Maria Owens, who was the original ancestor, it was fascinating. I really, really enjoyed it. I loved seeing where the characters started and came from and why the Owens family curse started, and just learning about Maria more, because they don't really touch on that a whole bunch, and I really liked her story. And I am usually a big historical fiction fan, and it felt like a historical fiction because of the time period that it was set in, which was the 1600s. I love how this story follows Maria Owens and shows you what the origination, or how the curse originated, and how she was just protecting her heart and protecting her daughter's heart, and it gives you more perspective for the future generations and things like that. So I I am loving this series as it goes on more. I'm glad that I ended up purchasing all of the books in this series when I did, because I think if I would have just gotten the Practical Magic book, I would have stopped. But I have been enjoying the prequels to the Practical Magic, and I know the Book of Magic is a continuation after Practical Magic. So it goes prequel, prequel, Practical Magic, and then the Book of Magic. So real fun. Really enjoyed this one. So the next book in August that I read was actually for my Michigan book club, and this is a reread for me. So I read this in 2021 and I loved it. My sister had this book as her book club choice for us because the movie was coming out and we wanted to go see it. I unfortunately still have yet to see it, but it's on my list, and that is Where the Crawdads Sing. So rereading this book was interesting because I already knew the ending. So to see it with the fresh perspective change of knowing what the ending was real fun, to see where the Marsh girl started and where she ended. So if you have read Where the Crawdads Sing and you've read it multiple times, how was your second read with it? Because for me, I really enjoyed it. I'm not going to give any spoilers away, but I loved the mix of a coming of age story with a little bit of murder mystery, and I just really enjoyed this one. It had me, the first time through, I was on the edge of my seat, and the second time through, I was looking for all the little clues and slip-ups and things like that, to where it ended. So I really enjoyed it. Our book club really enjoyed it. I think it got all really good reviews, and I hope to see the movie soon. Let me know if you saw the movie, if you liked it, if it was a good adaptation. I'm real interested to know. But Where the Crawdads Sing was always a good choice, and it feels like a summer book. So I'm really happy that we ended up reading this in August in the peak of summer. So the next two books that I read both of them on Hoopla, and they were some comic books, and it was the second two books in the Moon Knight series. So that is Moon Knight Volume 2, Reincarnations, and Moon Knight Volume 3, Birth and Death. I loved them. As I said with the first one, it was a wild trip. They took you to some crazy places. I loved the setting of the books. It is an Egyptian deity that they talk about. So they talk about a lot of the Egyptian deities and really get into some of that mythology. And I loved the different characters. I loved not knowing what the heck was going on half the time. Moon Knight is a fun comic book. So if you haven't read it yet, I would say if you want something that's a little on the wilder side psychologically, give it a try. It, I think, has a pretty good representation of insomnia and multi-personalities in somebody, and I thought that they did a really good job with it and made the different personalities feel like entirely different characters in the book. So definitely check out Moon Knight Volume 2 and 3. Well, 2 and 3. If you're interested in some different Marvel comic books. So the next two books that I read, I had actually been reading these comics for a while. So I have the app Webtoons, or is it just Webtoon? So the next two books that I read in August are some I was really, really excited to visit for the first time physically. So I had read this story up to this point already through the app Webtoon, and that is the Lore Olympus series. So I purchased the first two volumes, so volume 1 and volume 2, and I have been reading this story for a while, and I personally really, really enjoy it. There's some heavy topics. It is the story of Persephone and Hades, and I adore Persephone and Hades. They are, I mean, I think Persephone gets called a cinnamon roll at one point in the actual story. So I adore it. I think that the artwork is just gorgeous. These books are in full color, which, oof, gotta love that. And as I said, there are some triggering things that happen in the stories, which is very on par with Greek mythology. So I'm glad that Rachel Smith doesn't shy away from those topics, and they are done and talked about in a very artfully beautiful, tragic way. So there are heavier topics. There are also very light topics in these books as well, and I end up laughing out loud. So I have fallen in love with this story over the last, I feel like I've been reading it a couple years, and I am so, so happy to have the physical copies of these books, and I think that they are just gorgeous. And as they come out with more and more, I definitely will be having these on my bookshelf, and I will be expanding my collection because there are definitely more than 49 episodes in this series. There's going to be a lot of volumes if they keep coming out with more and more of them, and I sure do hope that they do. But they are very quick, and as I said, I love what the author has done with the story and how it is proceeding. So the next book that I read in August was Under the Whispering Door by T.J. Klune. This is the author that also wrote The House in the Cerulean Sea, which I fell in love with. We chose to do a T.J. Klune book for our August book club Patreon pick, and it was perceived pretty well. I feel like there was a mixture of reviews on it. I know that I personally really enjoyed this book. I did like The House in the Cerulean Sea better, but I still adored the character. I thought that the concept of it, which is a tea shop that people visit before they go on to the next world or before they move on from death. And I thought that concept was super cute, that there were Grim Reapers in it. The characters were adorable. It was, I thought, really well done. It was a heavy topic, which was death that they were talking about. And there is a lot of really, really good LGBT representation in the book. So I thought T.J. Klune did a really good job with this one. I'm probably just going to read all of the books that he puts out that are on the more adult side of things. And I'm glad that we picked this one, and I had a really good time with it. It was a feel-good, happy ending type of story with really, really lovable characters. So the last 2 books that I read in August were actually on loan from one of my friends. So I have a friend who is incredibly into the comic book genre, and she has been building up her comic book collection and let me borrow the next couple of volumes in the Nightwing series. So I talked about the first Nightwing in my last video. So this month I was able to read Nightwing Fear State and Nightwing Volume 2, Get Grayson. I have really, really enjoyed, as I have said, my dive into more comic books. I really like Nightwing. He is sassy, he is great, and he's got a great butt, which is a running joke in the series. I still love Bitewing, who is his dog, Haley, and I've just really been enjoying reading comic books, and I loved being able to physically hold them this time around. It was game changer. I feel like I sat on my bed with the comic books in their sleeves, spread out on the bed, and just like taking them out of the sleeve, being able to riffle through the pages and enjoying all of the different artwork from the different artists, because each chapter was by a different artist, and I really, really enjoyed that. So I believe that there is a 3rd Nightwing, and I'm excited to read that one as well. I think we're just waiting on a couple chapters or issues, not chapters, issues of Nightwing. But if you're looking for a sassy superhero, Nightwing's a fun one. I've enjoyed learning more. Hi, Minnie. Learning more about him and his relationship with the different Robins, and I just love Dick Grayson. So those were all of my August books. Now let's get into our last section, which is September, which I only read about 4 this month. So let's get into it. So the month of September, it was my choice to pick our book club book for my Michigan book club. And I chose A Novel of Peter Pan, Darling Girl, which follows the story of Holly Darling, yes, the granddaughter of Wendy Darling, and she is the owner of a really successful skincare company and has 2 children, and her daughter goes missing. Her daughter also is in a coma, so she couldn't just, get up and walk out on her own. And Holly suspects Peter Pan is behind all of it. It is a twisted take on the tale of Peter Pan. There are some darker things that happen in this book. There are some triggering events that happen. So Holly enlists the help of an ex-soldier to help her find her daughter and help protect her son from things that are going on. So this book has a lot of mystery to it. It's got a bit of a love story. It's got fairy tales that are twisted. It's got a lot of really good stuff in it. I really enjoyed it. It was a fast read. I finished it really fast. And it was a May book pick, and I finished it in September, so I'm getting a little better about finishing my book club book, my book of the month choices. This was one that I ended up just picking off the shelf, and I thought it turned out to be a pretty good summer read. I feel like Peter Pan to me feels very summery. So, well, into fall. It still feels like summer around here. The second book that I finished in September was a July 2022 Book of the Month selection. There's a theme for this month of all of the books. So this one was The Bodyguard, and it was about a, so the next book that I read in September was The Bodyguard. This one was just a fun, quick read that I actually listened to it as I was painting a room in my house. It is about a bodyguard who is a woman who is this petite, doesn't look tough person, and I think they say that it looks more like she's going to be a kindergarten teacher. I saw that in the dust jacket. Whose company was hired to take care of an actor whose name is Jack Stapleton from a stalker. So they're there to guard him from a stalker. And his mom ends up getting sick, so they end up going back to his family's farm, and he doesn't want his family to know that he's got a stalker on his hands, so there ensues fake dating trope. Always fun, always a fun time. So they end up fake dating, and then they progress from there. So it just is a very good love story. It was fun. My attention was so drawn to the cover, and I really actually enjoy the spine as well. I think that the flowers are really fun, and I thought that this was a good end of summer, really hot weather read. I was a little bit more of a mood reader the past couple of months, if you can't tell. I was feeling some summery books. So yeah, if you are in the mood for a cute little love story, fake dating trope, Bodyguard is a good one. So Bodyguard is a good choice for you. The next book for September was our Patreon book club choice, and that is Mexican Gothic. This book has been on my radar for a while. I have been wanting to read it. It got pretty rave reviews from our book club. Most people, if not everybody. Not everybody. There might have been a couple outliers here or there. Really enjoyed it. It was a Gothic book. It follows Naomi, who gets called to the Mexican countryside, to an estate in the Mexican countryside, because her cousin is sick and something seems to be off. So she's called to this Gothic home in the Mexican countryside that's up way high in the mountains, and some weird stuff happens in the house, and she gets sucked into this whole world of what is going on, who can I trust, is this family that my cousin married into, all of that stuff. So it was a fun read. It was wild. I don't always do great with scary or horrifying things. So I read this over 2 different days. I read it physically and listened to it at the same time. And I had nightmares in between. So if you are somebody who gets spooked, it did psychologically, something flipped in my brain and I had nightmares from it. So I read the rest of it and got it finished really quickly, and I really enjoyed it. So even if there's some creepy aspects to it, I still would recommend it. The final book that I read in September was The Book of Magic by Alice Hoffman. So I finished the series. I'm so happy that I finished it. I touched on it a little bit earlier in the video when I was talking about magic lessons. Yeah, magic lessons. I thought that it was a great conclusion to the series. This was the 4th book. So reading the books chronologically, which I didn't do, I did it from release date. So if you wanted to read it from the beginning chronologically, it would be Magic Lessons, Rules of Magic, Practical Magic, and then the Book of Magic. So this one is the conclusion to the Owens story. So you get to revisit some of your favorite characters. It starts out with Jet hearing the Death Watch beetle and sending the 3 generations of Owens that are alive at this point on to a adventure to try and break this curse. So I really enjoyed the conclusion of the story. I loved learning more about Sally's daughters. I also loved learning more about what happened in Fanny and Jet's and the long lost brothers' life, and really just getting the conclusion of this story. And I thought that it came full circle. They did a really, really good job. And as I said, I felt like the story kept getting better and better as we moved away from the first Practical Magic book. I read it, Practical Magic, Rules of Magic, Lessons of Magic, Magic Lessons, and then the Book of Magic. So I'm super proud of myself for finishing a series, and even though the first book wasn't quite what I was expecting, that I still pushed through and really, really enjoyed the conclusion of the Practical Magic series. So that concludes my part 3 reading journey of 2022 so far. I hope that you enjoyed hearing what all I read in July, August, and September of this year. I'm really looking forward to getting to part 4, which is going to be October, November, and December. That should hopefully be coming out right behind this one. And I'm really excited to share different books that I have been able to consume and that I've loved this year. I've definitely been on much more of a reading by feeling, so a mood reading type of year this year. And I'm excited to see where it takes me for the last couple of months. Let me know if there's any books that you have also read, books that you maybe are looking forward to, or even just suggestions for me. I always love adding to my TBR. If you enjoyed this, make sure to give it a like, comment, subscribe if you're interested in hearing more that I'm going to be reading, and just other content that I'm excited about making as well. And I hope that I catch you in the next one and we get to finish out this year strong, and I'm hoping that I get to my goal of 100 books. We shall see. So until then, have a great day, great night, whatever time it is, wherever you are, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye, friends.